Hello everyone and welcome. In this short training, I'm going to walk you through the template build worksheet, what it is, how to read it, and how to validate it. By the end of this video, you'll feel confident reviewing worksheets for your providers, understanding what the information tells you, and filling one out if updates are ever needed. What is the template build worksheet? The template worksheet is a structured summary of a provider's schedule. Its purpose is to clearly document when a provider sees patients, how many patient-facing hours they deliver, and what scheduling rules or constraints shape their template. This allows operational leaders to have accurate, timely data to support access and the practices and ensure the schedule aligns with the expected CFTE. In practice, the worksheet helps us answer: when does a provider see patients? How many hours of patient-facing time do they deploy? What unavailable times exist and why? And are there any scheduling rules that affect patient access? So let's now transition to the worksheet content overview. The template worksheet is made up of different template elements that get captured in one worksheet. So let's break down each section of the worksheet and review what information it provides and what you as an operational leader must validate. So let's start with the first part, which is the worksheet header. The worksheet header is the first thing that appears in the worksheet. The header contains key information including the provider's name, the date the worksheet was completed, the provider's clinic location, the name of the operational leader, and the change effective date. The change effective date is normally filled out when a change is being made to a provider's template and need to know when this change needs to take effect. Let's now transition to the clinic schedule section. As the name implies, the clinic schedule section documents the clinic schedule of the provider's home site. In this section, a table captures elements of the provider's schedule. So let's go over it together. The first column is the day of the week. It essentially tells you which day you are entering information for. There's nothing to enter here since it's already labeled for you. The week of month column asks you to specify which week of the month the provider works this schedule. For this column, you need to input the numbers between 1 through 5 to signify the respective week of the month the provider has clinic. For example, if the provider works every Monday of the month, then you would enter 1 through 5 to indicate each week of the month. If the provider has clinic on the first and third Tuesday of the month, then you would put 1 and 3. AM start and AM stop columns indicate the start and end time of the morning clinic session. For example, if the first appointment of the provider's schedule is at 8 a.m., then you would put 8 a.m. in the AM start box. And if the last morning appointment is at 11:40 a.m. and it's a 20-minute appointment, then the AM stop time will be 12 p.m., reflecting the end time of the last AM appointment slot. The next column is it your preference to regularly schedule patients during lunch? As the title of the column states, it is asking whether the provider does or does not want patients scheduled during the lunch hour. For this column, the options that you can select are either yes or no, depending on the provider's preference. The PM start and PM stop columns indicate the start and end of the afternoon clinic session. For example, if the first afternoon appointment for the provider schedule is at 1 p.m., then you would put 1 p.m. in the PM start box. And if the last appointment slides at 4 p.m. and it lasts for 20 minutes, then the PM stop would be 4:20 p.m. The final column is total patient-facing hours, excluding lunch. In this column, it'll reflect the hours the provider spends in patient appointments that day. So for each weekday, you'll need to sum up the hours that the provider worked on both AM and PM sessions, excluding the lunchtime. In this example, the AM session is between 8 a.m. through 12 p.m., The PM session is between 1 p.m. through 4:20 p.m. So the total hours is 4 hours for the morning session plus 3 hours and 20 minutes in the afternoon session, equaling 7 hours and 20 minutes. You'll do this for each day of the week, and then on the last row, you'll need to sum up the total hours for all days of the week. In the event that the provider works different hours on different weeks for the same day, an additional line must be added to document this. As you see here, the provider works the first and third Tuesday seeing patients in the AM and PM sessions, but on the second and fourth Tuesday, they only see patients in the AM session. That completes the clinic schedule section. As operation leaders, you'll need to validate the filled out clinic schedule sections provided to you, or if you're filling it out yourself, you want to make sure it's filled out correctly. So here's a validation checklist that will help ensure it's correctly filled out. The first one is the week of month information is accurate. The start and end times of each clinic sessions are correct. The information noted in the "Is it your preference to regularly schedule patient during lunch?" column accurate, and the total patient-facing hours were accurately calculated. Let's now transition to the alternate clinic schedule section. The alternate clinic schedule section documents any clinic schedule that is outside the home site, such as a subspecialty clinic or satellite location. This section starts with the clinic location line in which the clinic name and ID number need to be added, as shown here. For this section, the table is almost the same as the clinic schedule section, but the only difference is that in the day of the week column, you need to indicate which day of the week you are referring to when filling out the table. Besides that, follow the same principles as the clinic schedule section to fill out the remaining parts of the table. Filling this section out will help capture all patient-facing time, not just what happens at the home site. In the case that the provider doesn't have a clinic schedule at an alternate location, you can skip this section. That wraps up the alternate clinic schedule section. When reviewing this completed section for accuracy, make sure that the clinic location field is filled out with the clinic name and ID, the week of the month information is accurate, the start and end times of each clinic sessions are correct, the information noted "Is it your preference to regularly schedule patients during lunch?" column is accurate, and then that the total patient-facing hours were accurately calculated. So let's now transition to the unavailable time section of the worksheet. So what is unavailable time? It is time in the master template that is designated as unavailable for patient care and can be a single instance or reoccurring period for activities such as administrative time, meetings, or surgery. So why is unavailable time useful in the template? It ensures patients are not booked when provider is not available. Accurately marking this time and using standard reasons help us capture why parts of the schedules are intentionally blocked and quantify the non-clinical responsibilities that affect patient capacity. This section also includes a table that needs to be filled out to outline a provider's unavailable time. So let's review it together. The first column is the day of the week. It essentially tells you which day you are entering information for. Again, there's nothing to enter here since it's already labeled for you. The week of month column asks you to specify which weeks of the month the unavailable time is active on. For this column, you only need to input numbers between 1 through 5 to signify the respective week of the month. For example, if the unavailable time is consistently every single week, then you will put 1 through 5. If it only happens on the first and third week of the month, then you will only need to put 1 and 3. The reason for unavailable time column asks you to indicate the reason why the provider is blocked from seeing patients. There's a drop-down field for you to choose a reason. If none of the options apply, select Other. You can also refer to the standard block type list for the comprehensive list and its definition. The next two columns are the start and stop columns. This is where you need to indicate the exact time the unavailable block begins and ends. For example, the provider has a weekly admin time for 2 hours between 12 and 2 p.m. So you'll input 12 p.m. in the start field and 2 p.m. in the stop field. The next column is the total hours of unavailable time. Here's where you need to calculate the total duration of that unavailable block time. In this example, it will be 2 hours for an admin time and 4 hours for attending/precepting. For the last row of this column, you'll need to add up all the hours in order to get the total hours for the week. The last column is the notes column, where you can add details about the unavailable blocks that you noted. Please note that if a provider has multiple reasons for being unavailable in the same day, add an additional row to document that additional reason, as shown here in this example. That wraps up the unavailable time section, so let's go over the validation checklist. When reviewing this section, make sure the week of month information is accurate, the reason for unavailable time is accurate, the start and end time for each unavailable time is accurate, and that the total hours of unavailable time is accurate. So let's now transition to the hold time section of the worksheet. What is hold time? Hold time is time on the master template that is intended to be used for patient care but is temporarily reserved. These slots may be held for certain patients or visit types. There are two types of holds, manual and auto-release. Manual holds never release or become visible through auto-search, so patients can only be booked into these slots manually by staff or providers. Auto-release holds can be configured to be automatically released at a specified time. Once released, they will show up in auto-search. These slots can be configured for any visit types or specified subset of visit types. Judicious use of auto-release hold is important to ensure that slots do not go unfilled and wasted. Hold time in the template is useful because it allows us to reserve time for short-term demand or specific patient needs. This section has a table, so let's go over it together. As you can see, it's pretty identical to the unavailable time table that we just covered. It has the day of the week of the month, in which you numerically indicate which week the hold time occurs. Then there's the reason for hold. Similar to the previous unavailable time table, it has a drop-down option for you to select the appropriate hold reason. Then there are the start and end time columns for you to indicate the exact time the hold period begins and ends. Then we have the total hours held column where you need to calculate the duration of the hold time, with the last row having to sum up the total hours for the week. Lastly, there is the notes/thought preferences in which you can add additional information for each hold that is listed. When reviewing this section for accuracy, make sure you validate the following. The week of month information is accurate, the reason for hold selection is accurate, the start and end time for each hold time is accurate, and the total hours of hold time is accurate. Let's now transition to the total patient-facing hours section of the worksheet. Underneath the hold time section, there are 3 fields where calculations are made. The first one is total patient-facing hours without holds and unavailable time. This is calculated by adding all the hours from the clinic schedule section and the alternate clinic schedule section. For example, if you had 20 total hours in the provider schedule section and 12 hours in the alternate clinic schedule section, the total patient-facing hours are 32 hours. The second calculation is total patient-facing hours with holds and unavailable time. This is calculated by adding the determined value above and add the hours reported in the holds and unavailable time section. For example, if you had 1 hour in total holds and 2 hours in total unavailable time, you'll add them to our previous 32-hour patient-facing hours to give you a total of 35 hours. The last calculation is target hours, which is essentially the expected clinical hours needed to deploy based on the provider's CFTE. That wraps up the total patient-facing hours section. So let's go over the validation checklist. When reviewing this section, make sure that the total patient-facing hours without holds is accurate, that the total patient hours with holds is accurate, and that the target hours is accurate. Let's now transition to the session limits section of the template worksheet. What are session limits? Session limits are configurable rules that define the maximum number of a visit type that can be booked within a defined time frame. Session limits are helpful in templates because they help balance the types of visits in a provider schedule, such as limiting follow-ups to maintain adequate space for new consults or vice versa. Using session limits instead of designated specific time slots for particular visit types, it provides more flexibility for patients and provides overall control of the number while reducing the complexity of the template build. In the session limits section, there are 3 tables where information can be placed based on the cadence. So there is a weekly table, a daily table, and an AM and PM session table. Depending on the session limit cadence the provider may have, the appropriate table should be filled out. As you can see with all 3 tables, they all start with a visit type column, in which you need to write down the visit type that the session limit is tied to. This may include standalone visit types, a visit type grouper, or all visit types. The weekly table, it asks you to note the maximum number of those visit types allowed in 1 week. For example, if the provider has a session limit of 5 new patient consults in a week, then you will need to put 5 in the weekly max box. The daily and AM/PM session tables break down the cadence by day of the week so that you can place the session limit count in the respective day. For example, if a provider has a daily session limit of 2 patient consults on Friday, then you would add 2 on the Friday box. If the session limit is more specific, such as the provider only sees a max of 1 new patient consult in the morning and 1 in the afternoon on Fridays, then you would fill out the AM/PM session table as shown here. And the last column for all 3 tables is the notes column, where you can add any additional information for each inputted session limit. In the case that the provider doesn't have any session limits, feel free to leave this section blank. That wraps up the session limits section. So let's go over the validation checklist. When reviewing this section for accuracy, make sure that the weekly session limits are correct, that the daily session limits are correct, and that the AM/PM session limits are correct. Let's now transition to the visit blocks section of the template worksheet. What is a visit block? Visit blocks allow you to designate that a certain visit type or types, such as a video visit, procedures, can only be scheduled in a specific block of time. Visit blocks can help ensure that we book the right kinds of visits at the right time of day and ensures that auto search surfaces the right slots for a given visit type. This section has a table as well, so let's go over it together. The first column is the visit type column, in which you note the visit type the block is for. The time of day column is where you add the exact times when the visit type is allowed to occur. Monday through Friday columns are filled with checkboxes to indicate the days of the week when the visit blocks apply. lastly, there is the Notes/Thought Preferences column where you can add additional details about the visit block. That wraps up the visit block section, so let's go over the validation checklist. When reviewing this section, make sure that the visit types are accurate, that the time of day is accurately reported for each visit type, and that the correct weekday has been selected. Let's now go over the last section of the template worksheet, screenshots. In this section, screenshots of the template layout, actual schedule, and session limit configuration are placed here to visually confirm the information provided in the above sections. When validating this section, make sure that the screenshots of the provider's template, sample weekly schedules, and session limits are accurate. Thank you for taking the time to learn how to use the template build worksheet. This tool is essential for driving template accuracy, improving access, and ensuring a consistent scheduling experience across our organization. Thank you for watching.